Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Nice to see you all again. It's a little bit different to the Oyston days, isn't it? Really, it's a little bit different. We'll try and first thing I'd like to do, folks, is welcome our guests that we have with us today. In addition to all of you fine people that have attended, we have from our illustrious football club, Brett Geraghty and Ben Mansford. They're double act, they merge into one a little bit, don't they? Brett and Ben will soon be coming up to the stage to have a Q&A session, so any questions that you've got, wonderful. Rather than do things on social media, we can speak face to face and get a proper dialogue going like we like to do. And we also have with us so far Scott Benton, MP for Blackpool South, who will be conducting a bit of a Q&A afterwards. He's quite closely involved with the old parliamentary football group in the House of Commons, and is an issue close to his heart, football governance, etc., etc. So once Brett and Ben are finished, we will invite Scott and also possibly Paul Maynard, who's hopefully joining us this morning as well. So anyhow, we will move on with a few bits of BST business, constitutional items. We're going to go through the accounts. We're going to talk about our election results, which we're constitutionally obliged to have on an annual basis. And then also we will then pass over to Christine for fundraising, which is a critical thing. In the Oyston years, we had very full coffers, as you can imagine. A lot of people have thrown a lot of money at the organisation. Now we still want to do all our good charitable stuff to do with food banks, to do with the mascots, to do with season tickets for the privileged families, to do with the shirts initiative. But obviously our sort of resources are depleting a little bit. So Christine's going to cover that for us. So first up, could I call up Mr. Tony Hodgson?
Good morning, everybody. There's nothing like getting the meeting off to a great start by going through a set of accounts. So I can see the excitement in your faces. So I'll try and get through it quite quickly. The accounts were published on our website. Robbie, the secretary, sent you an email. They're in the About section, so if you really want to look at the detail, you can download them or you can read them on the website. I'll keep it brief. So our income last year was £3,500. In previous years, we probably had some income, sometimes £25,000–30,000 income, but that was in the good old bad old days when we were selling protest shirts and Oyston out scarves and things like that, and we built up a fund, an emergency fund, a battle fund. Our expenses were £18,000, so you don't need to be a financial genius to work out we had a bit of a deficit last year. So our deficit was £15,000, which sounds a little bit shocking, a little bit worrying, but it was a conscious decision by the committee to actually spend some of our funds, because through those good old bad old days we built up a fighting fund of about £30,000. It sat in the bank account not doing anything for a couple of years, and we consciously made a decision to do something with the money. So some of the initiatives Andy mentioned, we did the shirts for the Year 2 kids across Blackpool, because where we were coming from, what we were thinking was the club's coming out of COVID, we're trying to get fans back into the stadium, so we did initiatives that were around how do we get fans back, how do we even attract fans that maybe have not gone to see Blackpool FC before. So there's the Year 2 initiative, there was the season tickets that Andy mentioned, that was targeted at families who maybe couldn't afford to go, and a few other initiatives like that. So it was a sort of a win-win. We're putting some coffers towards the club, but we're also getting fans into the stadium as well. So where we are at the moment, we've got £13,000 in the bank account, and I'm sort of comfortable about that. That's just money there. That's fine. I wouldn't like to go below £13,000. So we'll talk about later. So
financially, okay. That's pretty comprehensive. Also, we're going to ask, is there any votes against that or any abstentions? Nope. Okay. That's all constitutionally sound. We'll just whiz on quickly to the elections. An election take place where it's a competition between as many people, but we had, unfortunately, 2 or 3 excellent candidates who wanted to stand, but we just missed the deadline, unfortunately. However, they will be part of the BS team going forward. So, in terms of what happened this year, the 3 candidates that were put up for election, Tony Wilkinson, Francis Charlesworth and Patrick McChrystal, were all really basically sort of wave through, but they need to be re-elected by affirmation of the AGM basically today. So if you can just put up your hands if you're in favour of that, or your cards. Yeah, it feels very old school trade union like this, isn't it? It's great. Okay, thank you very much. Anybody against? Oof, no. And any abstentions? No. Okay, so congratulations you three, and welcome you back to the committee. Okay, I will now pass over to Ms Christine Seddon, who looks after the fundraising item on the agenda today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Can you hear me at the back? Good. So as you've already heard from Tony, we have reserves, but they are dwindling. We don't have the easy ways of raising funds that we used to have when a certain family were in charge of the football club, but we're still very ambitious about what we want to do. Now, the Trust as an organisation, we're having to evolve, we're having to change. We were famous as a protest organisation, but the need to protest is no longer there. We now have a football club that we can not only work with, but that we want to work for as well. And one of the things that we were really, really concerned about in those years that we were all stood outside and not going to games was how we were losing young people. How young people did not have that opportunity to have the links with the club that you would normally have. It is very gratifying to see how many youngsters have come back. There's a couple in front of me who regularly sing about how they're going on the pitch with Jerry Yates. And it's great to see, but there is more to be done. And so that's why last year we had the initiative about providing shirts for all the Year 2 children. We actually got into every school in Blackpool, and it was very, very successful. So successful, in fact, that the club and the Supporters Trust are up for a national award for what we did. So I hope that we win it, and we will of course let you know if we have that success. This year we focused on mascots and the mascot packages. We purchased 12 packages for members for you to nominate who you felt deserved it, and we also kept a quarter of them back for local good causes, and Home Start being a fantastic organisation that's well placed to know which families are in need. And this is going tremendously well, so well in fact that I would just like to read to you. Sorry, it's on my phone. We've had an email today from Gary Senior, whose grandson was one of the first mascots from the package. I'm just going to read it quickly, and I particularly want Ben and Brett to hear this as well, and I'll try not to get emotional, but this explains why we do what we do. So he wants to give us an update about his 6-year-old grandson, Aaron. They live in Wigan. And he was fortunate to be drawn out of the hat for the first mascot draw earlier this season. Before the Swansea game, Aaron had only been to 2 football matches, both home games for the Seasiders. In truth, he wasn't really interested each time after about 10-15 minutes when all these drinks and sweets had gone, and he was bored and he wanted to go home. I've just lost it, sorry. I was about to give up bringing him, which was going to prove to be expensive, junior season ticket in Block N. His own son had been using it because his grandson didn't really want to come. Aaron's lack of interest is now a distant memory after his special day as mascot, where he met the players in the dressing room before the game, played football with a couple of lads from the community trust, went on the pitch with Bloomfield Bear, and even scored a goal in the penalty shootout, got a bag of goodies from the club, met the referee, and lots more. The list is endless. He even took his bag of goodies into school on the Monday after the game and told the class about his day at Blackpool FC. Some of his little friends still don't believe there's a team called Blackpool. Now he nags me every home game to go, and he's got his Blackpool kit and coat on first thing in the morning, ready to do the 80-mile return journey to watch Gary Medine, the goal machine, and the rest of the Seasiders team hopefully win. So he can't thank BST enough for doing the initiative, he can't thank the club enough, and I have to say that we've had other feedback, which is on our website if you want to read any of the stories, about how fantastically well the club looks after these children. This is what we need to be doing. This is how we are going to get children to engage again. So that's what we're doing it for, and I think that was just a lovely story, so thank you to them for that. do this every year, as well as sponsoring season tickets, sponsoring players, like we're sponsoring Jake Daniels this year, sponsoring Blackpool girls and women's teams. Again, this is very important and up and coming, and supporting the BFC volunteers as well. So what we intend to do is to launch a prize draw to help raise the money we need and to do it in a sustainable way. We will be asking all fans, not just members, to join the draw, committing only to what you can afford. So we start at a minimum of £5 a month for a place in the draw. If you can afford more, you can buy more places. So we have got BST committee members and helpers here today to sign you up if you wish. And we're setting up a website with methods for joining in a way that suits you. So I want to just introduce to you now Ant Summers. Many of you know Ant. Ant was involved with BST from the start. We have co-opted Ant onto our committee. He's the expert in this, so I'm just going to let him say a few words about it.
Hi, you're right. Yeah, I used to run goal bonds back when it used to be a thing. So I know a thing or two about this. It's pretty niche. So I'm just going to do all the admin. I'm just going to look through bank statements every month, cross-reference who's paid, who's not paid, put you in the draw, and then we'll probably do like some sort of live stream to show that we're doing it properly. Random number generator will be from Google, but it's all pretty straightforward stuff, but I'm not going to bore you with the details. So that's me.
Just explain about the prizes and how we're going to nominate, decide.
So I think with the prizes, for the first draw, to try and generate a little bit of interest, the first prize is going to be £200, the second prize is going to be £100, third prize £50.
50, yeah.
Now, depending on how many people we actually get involved, we might not actually be able to sustain that, I think. So it might, I'm guessing it could be reduced to a percentage of, say you only get 50 people interested, and it's, so...
It could go the other way up.
It could go the other way.
It will go the other way.
It could go the other way. Just looking around the room, that's all, mate. So, but I'll keep in touch and obviously, communicate properly.
The Q code on the thing.
Oh yeah, there's a QR code.
Yes.
There's a QR code. So it's going to be phones, it'll take you straight to the website. You can sign up. It's pretty straightforward, or you can sign up by standing order, whichever's easiest. But we don't really want to be dealing in cash.
You know the old gold bond?
Yeah.
What's their top prize?
In its heyday, it was £2,000 a week.
So surely the aim's got to be to get up there.
Yeah. Yeah, but we had 30,000 members in Gold Bond back then.
Right,
So.
so it's a case of building.
You're right, Scott, it is. Great oaks from Little Acorns
But
grow.
if them idiots that you sort of look to build that up, then
Yeah.
surely we can surpass that.
Yeah.
Bear in mind also that half the money that comes in goes out as prizes directly. So it's half
It does.
the money goes out as
But
prizes.
I think we're looking to. We've got a couple of signed shirts, haven't we? We've got various other bits and pieces. I call them money can't buy items because they often mean more than money. We used to do like when I was at Stockport. We used to do like signed pictures of the team and the manager and stuff like that.
Are you going to go door to door again, or is it all online?
How much time do you think I've got? Maybe one day. Who knows?
Tell them a bit of flooring at the same time.
Yeah, maybe.
If you could sign up for this, we'd be really grateful. It's obviously going to put money in so we can do more of the good stuff.
Yeah.
Also, this relates to your friends, your colleagues, your neighbours. We may not be Blackpool supporters. Half the money is going into prizes here. This is a cracky draw.
Well said.
Yeah, it's a good point because the old gold one, I mean, I had people in my family who weren't football fans at all that used to
Exactly.
gold bonds, so.
At the end of the day, this is things that are going to benefit the community as well as the football club. So it's about getting the word out there. It's about signing like Mark said, signing up your neighbours and your friends, and we'll grow this. It's a good initiative, and we will grow it, and we will be putting a lot more out about it soon. But today is a great day. Those who are here present can get signed up, and those the thousands who are watching, you can go online and get signed up as
Christine,
well.
can I just say what the website name is?
Yes.
It's 1953, nice and easy to remember, .live. So it's not hard to remember, 1953.live.
1953.live.
It starts at £5 a month, or essentially £1 a week.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. So we know this is a bad time to be asking you for money. We know not everyone can afford to help, but if you can, please do. It will generate benefits for you, for the club, for the community, and grow support for the club. So what's not to like for a minimum of £5 a month? So thank you for listening. Please get on board with it and up the pub.
He will be in the description. Thank you, Christine. He'll also be in the description. I'll put the link in the description.
Thank you.
Cheers, Lee. Appreciate that. Yeah, let's try and grow it as best as we can. Every penny that goes in there either goes to a good cause or you'll be back as a prize. So, you know, superb, really. And thanks very much for coming on board to do all this and give us a lot of assistance in putting all this together. And Tony, who's built a wonderful website as well. It is really intuitive and easy to use. So, okay, we'll move on to the Q&A with our guests, if that's okay. Could I invite to the stage Brett and Ben? If that's okay. Give them a nice round of applause, folks. Yeah. We'll have a roving microphone as well in terms of questions. Just want to say hello, Brett, check the levels are okay there.
Morning everyone, thank you very much for the invite, we're very grateful.
Yep.
Yes, we're working. We have connectivity.
Does that work, Steve? Okay, brilliant. Sugar.
Right, folks. There's a lot of stuff on social media about our wonderful football club, but now is the time to speak to these gentlemen in the flesh. So, hands up, please, and we'll take as many questions as we can in the time available. Don't be shy. Here we go.
Can I start it off, gentlemen?
Excuse me, sorry, David. We've got a question at the back.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, it's okay. We'll come to you next. Okay. Here you go, pal.
We're gagging for the training facility.
Sorry, we lost you there, sorry. Why don't you come forward?
We're gagging for the training facilities. I'm sure the players are. Can you just give us a resume of where we are, please?
Yeah, look, we all hear that.
That isn't a spiky.
No. Look, quite rightly, every.
Is the microphone working?
Was it? Sorry.
I think we're just out of range on this one.
I was trying not to use the microphone, seeing as I didn't get a microphone this way. So, and as most people know, bullshit Ben can hit the back of.
What are you talking about?
Hit the back of most rooms. In all seriousness, it's really important, of course. One thing that I can do to just maybe update you, because a lot won't be aware, that we've invested again in the facility at Squires Gate. So during the World Cup break, there'll be another building going which will operate as a gym. We found that a real sort of issue with the players. So again, Simon will be investing another sort of six-figure sum in the current facility during the November break. In terms of the long-term sort of plan, we are well underway with, if there's surveyors and architects in the rooms or property types, with our sort of RIBA Stage 2 into RIBA Stage 3, preparations for the planning application, and we'll work hard to do that. As I'm also sure we're going to maybe touch on the East Stand at some point in the next hour or so before Brett and I have to leave. And what you're all aware is this is a really challenging time at the moment, and inflationary pressures on building and contractors, and actually getting contractors to quote, is going to be really difficult and challenging. So everyone's intention is to move things forward with the training ground. A lot of money is being spent preparing, sort of upwards of £20 million. And that is much different. When I first started looking at sites nearly 3 years ago to the day, but yeah, it is. You know, it was 8 to 12 potentially. Now we're in excess of 20.
Thank you. David? Take the microphone.
I think my voice is good enough to carry, but never mind. Gentlemen, in my view, second only to the success of the Supporters Trust with the OO campaign was the evidence it gave to Nancy Crouch's committee in the House of Commons. It's a forensic analysis of all that's wrong with professional football in this country. And I think on all sides of the football industry, there's been unanimous, pretty well, support for the, I think it's nearly 50 recommendations in her findings. And out of all that, the lobbying that has taken place has been led by fairgameuk.org, a collection of football clubs and people keenly interested to see this legislation come forward. A white paper has been promised now for many months. I'm sure Scott has been doing his best to get it in the hands of the Minister before the Commons. But it needs lobbying, and the Premier League has not been slow in coming forward. Indeed, they are always the big problem for British football. And when you think that a parachute payment club receives as much as the 140 clubs beneath them, I think that in itself says all that's wrong. We need regulation. Of all Blackpool's experience, of course, the Supporters Trust over the years, has been matched with this experience of many other supporters trusts around the country. And I think we all know how many clubs have been in serious financial trouble. What I'm asking really is will the club join Fair Game? I think it costs £1,000 a year. I think it's small money. And when I look and think today's match, a championship club that is a member of Fair Game is Luton. And I hope that from this meeting, the message might go back to your board that you ought to join and be part of this massive lobbying campaign to get regulation brought in as a matter of urgency.
Thank you, David.
We've just decided that I'll start and Brett will finish this one off, because I think we both could speak for, well, from now till the end of the game, really, about the fan-led review and about the importance of the fan-led review. A couple of quick ones. In relation to Fair Game, I've got a session booked in with them during the World Cup break to understand a little bit more. There was a letter that went out. Given that I think to sign up as a football club, that needs, board sort of involvement, and definitely Simon's involvement. But what I explained to Fair Game in my response and to set up the meeting with them was to say that you've got a club that's like thoroughly engaged in this process, and I think most of you in this room that are engaged in everything connected to the fan-led review know Scott's been a big supporter of the fan-led review, and really the levelling up of the football playing field. But is it more than that? Yes, it is. I was listening to a club we were playing recently, and their directors were saying we generate £37 million a year, and I can't believe I've got to compete with someone that gets 44 million without any commercial income, which is obviously the parachute payments. The parachute payments are clearly anti-competitive, and it's not right that they get their way. The paper was promised in autumn. You can grill Scott when he's up here next about what autumn means. I think autumn means like September, October, or it did in Hull growing up. I'm sure it's not dissimilar in Blackpool. It means now autumn sounds like the 24th of December if we're lucky. But I'll leave that one to Scott. Sorry, Scott. But look, it's absolutely critical. I've just talked about inflationary pressures. We've just talked about needing to put rights on. The fan-led review is critical. There needs to be a redistribution of the monies in football. And, if Scott was speaking to his, his peers and people involved in not just sport, but also levelling up, it's a way where I don't think the challenge is the big six or the big eight clubs of journey into the Premier League and then be thinking about the journey out of the Premier League. It's those that, it is the proverbial turkeys voting for Christmas, because they don't want that. But that's why, and I was very fortunate that Tracy Crouch, through Paul Maynard and others, allowed us to have an opportunity, Simon and I, to grill Tracy for about an hour or so. And it's clear that the FA isn't fit for purpose, in my opinion. The FA's been missing since COVID really broke out, and the FA has played a very subservient part to the progression of the Premier League in 30 plus years. So the FA are campaigning at the moment to host the independent regulator. I'm not quite sure what that definition means, we're not quite at those conversations. But for me, we need people who know how to govern, how to provide good governance, and how to ensure that that's happening. So Simon has been at meetings and has had opportunities to speak to Conservative MPs in particular in recent weeks. He is fully engaged in this process. We as a club are very much behind a lot of what exists with the fan-led review. I've had many chats with Andy and Robbie when we have our catch-ups about it as well. And the specific fair game, you know, we're there. So I don't know if you want to add a bit more on that, Brett.
Yeah, thank you. When the government talks about levelling up, one of the best ways in which the government can achieve that would be the redistribution of the income from the Premier League to filter down to clubs like Blackpool, who would then spend that money on the infrastructure of the club, not on wages, not on agent fees, but to help develop in areas where it's most needed. And Blackpool is a really good example of that. Simon has made that representation, certainly to Scott and to Paul, and at high level with Ms Crouch, and I'm sure he will do so with Michael Gove when he's in town next, which is imminent. Probably a good example, and I don't think I speak out of turn in saying, probably one of the best examples of what's wrong with football is that during the recent transfer window, the football club spoke with two ex-Premier League footballers who had earned probably circa £30 million within a very short period of time, made very generous contract offers, and they would rather to stay in bed than accept the offer that was made to them. They didn't go anywhere else, they just chose not to play. And that probably sums up what's wrong with football, that there is so much money around at the high level that it makes it very difficult for the likes of Blackpool to compete. And if there is to be levelling up, let's start with that money filtering down so that the likes of Simon Sadler can put that money back into the community. And I must emphasise, not on players, not on transfers fees, but building around the infrastructure of the football club so that the community in which the club is based can prosper and benefit from that money from the very wealthy owners in the Premier League.
Great answer. Okay, we've got so we've just got one here. Anybody else? Just second board, okay. That's over to
Is that working, or do I need to?
no. Speak back to the microphone.
Okay. Hopefully this is a question that may not cost very much money to solve, but it may not be an easy one to crack. I did ask about this last year, and it's about sexist chanting at the grounds. I know that Steve and you guys and us are working towards having some kind of discussion about female supporters clubs, but this is a different issue, I believe, in that this is something that doesn't need to have any kind of proper supporters representation specifically. It's about what you're going to do to clamp down on sexist chanting. We've clamped down on racist chanting, we've clamped down on homophobic chanting, but we're still having the sexist chanting regularly. And although we have put up with this for many years, it does make women cringe. And as I said, so all those other projects shouldn't implicate on any of those things. So I just wondered what we're going to do, because now we have obviously a female ground safety officer. Maybe this is something that will help, but do you have any plans beyond
Karen,
what that's?
The point you make is extremely valid. You did make it last year, that's quite correct. As a club, we do not tolerate hate crime of any variance, whether that be racism, homophobia or misogyny. They are all unacceptable within Blackpool Football Club, and we will do our utmost to stamp them out. Ben and I come to the games with our wives, Simon comes with his wife and his children, and we despise a certain chant that I won't make reference to, but we hear it, it's outdated, it's uncalled for, it's just not acceptable within the modern game. As a community, we've moved on. What I would say is you're quite right that we do now have a female ground safety officer who is doing a wonderful job, new in post. We're delighted to have her. And Karen, I would invite you, if you hear misogynistic comments that are made, tell us who that is and we will take action upon it.
To be fair, Brett, I mean, it's chanting.
Yeah.
I mean, I even had a kid behind me, a young boy, he must have been about 10, singing along. And
yeah, well,
that, you know, that's the way it is.
Well, we have to question there the parenting as well, don't we? That 10-year-old will not be there unaccompanied, and we have to. No, you're quite right to make the observation. Can I touch on the Steve's at the back, Steve Rowland? We discussed a female supporters group because we are very keen to give women more of a voice at the football club. We have a lot of female supporters who attend, and we potentially have female supporters who don't attend for reasons that you've just highlighted, Karen, that perhaps they don't feel comfortable, perhaps they feel that it's an environment which they find is not welcoming, and we need to do more to make that a better place for women, for the match day experience to be enhanced, home and away. Now we know that at Watford, Steve spoke with the ladies at Watford. Lads, it makes me anxious. So there's more to do around women's involvement in the football, which we want. The women's game is growing, and quite rightly. We support that as a club. We have the community trust involvement now, and the group has received great response. I think Steve's had around 25 ladies who have expressed an interest from last night, which is a good start. So we will have a meeting, and let's give women more of a voice in the way that things move forward. I hope that answers your question, Karen.
Cheers, Brett.
Can I just add to that?
Yes.
I'm a female fan, but possibly not a typical female fan. But it's great to know the club are very upfront with everything to do with inclusivity and diversity. And I work with the FSA as well on female issues. And I'm aware that there's a lot of women who, because I think they didn't play football as a child like most men did, don't have that confidence to be linked to football. And now that things are changing, the women's game is improving. I think that over time that will change naturally. My niece's 2 children play every Saturday. They're both girls, and it's part of their life. So I think that will change issues. But I would also say that it's great the club support this and don't accept that kind of misogynistic chanting which has always gone on. But also, we girls have to stand up for ourselves. So it's gone again. And I would also ask for the gentlemen in the ground to also make a stand. We as individuals must take personal responsibility. We need to push back against this antisocial behaviour, whatever it is. The club can only do so much. So if you hear it, challenge it. I certainly do.
100%.
And that is the way to really stamp it out. It has to become unacceptable to our football culture at our club.
Yeah, it's all our problem. Yeah, and we all must do our bit to end that. And it'd be great to see your involvement, Christine, in the new women's group, hopefully.
So we've got Mark, and then we've got Tony next.
Yeah, we are looking at that, Karen.
Yeah, Mark Turner, BST committee. Really pleased and interested to hear what you said about fans-led review and money coming down the pyramid and being used to support community sort of football clubs. We're about to head into a really, what could be a cold and long winter for a lot of people. So my question is, and it's a bit of a tee-up really, you know, what can the club do with that fantastic asset across the road? I know great things happen in this place, the Armfield, but what can happen at Bloomfield Road to keep people warm at winter?
Cheers, Mark.
It's a really good question, and we're working with Ash on that. And the EFL have recently circulated, you know, sort of letters to that effect. Look, what we're going to do as clubs, what can we do? you know, look, we want to try and talk about a lot of positive things happening at the football club today, but you're quite right that there are, you know, some challenging times ahead this winter, and maybe this is, if things are to be believed, you know, a challenging financial period for some time. In my lifetime, obviously, I remember 2007, 2008, and yeah, what's happened in recent times with interest rates in particular, mortgages, credit cards, car loans and the like is going to put everybody under pressure. I think you're all aware that there was food banks that operated through sort of the community trust. Utilita have come in as our front of shirt sponsor and want to kick that on. We've started discussing with Ash about potentially opening up the stadium so many days, so many hours a week, somewhere people can come and probably interact with each other, share stories, be provided guidance, and I'm hopeful that hopefully during the World Cup break we can start to put some things in place to build on the wonderful work that the Community Trust does around those areas. So it is very much something, and I think we touched on in the structured dialogue meeting as well, that we're going to try and find ways that we can open the stadium up and we can provide warm spaces and spaces where people can come and maybe take some really basic but initial guidance, whether it's leaflets, whether it's signposted, whether it's staff there from citizens' advice and places like that to try and give them help in managing the challenges ahead.
I just answer that. And Robbie, Andy, Ben and I had a brief discussion the other day, just very briefly, just to add to that. We were asked about what help BST can give to Blackpool Football Club, and it's a very generous offer. And what we did discuss around maybe volunteers helping with that warm space, being present, being there to engage with people, and just to chat and be there, you know, a helping hand. So that's perhaps one example of the club and the trust again working closely together.
Yeah, thanks for that. That's a really encouraging response. Obviously, community assets like football clubs, they're mostly about football, aren't they? You know, we're interested in what happens, we're particularly interested in what happens midweek at the moment, but we're interested in what happens at the weekends. But it's an opportunity to bind the club and what it represents to the community more, and who knows, we might even get some more fans out of it.
Yeah, agreed.
Cheers, Mark. Next up, we've got Tony Wilkinson. Anybody else wants to ask a question? Raise your hands. Okay. Let's do that.
Yeah, just going back to the situation with the fan-led review. Thanks, David Owen, for raising that one. And I'd just like to add to that a lot of people may be aware that through the Supporters Trust, we've had great input into this. Myself, Christine, and our secretary, Robbie Whittaker, have all been involved with the Football Supporters Association. We presented to Tracy Crouch. We had a half-hour session when the information was given. And obviously, at this football club, our history, you know, it just highlights how much the fan-led review is, you know, and the regulation is needed, the independent regulator. It was this Supporters Trust that first ever called for an independent regulator. We set up a petition in 2018, I think it was, and we were the first people to call for an independent regulator. Everybody really are playing catch up now on that, and you know, we were ahead of our time. I think Christine has said that in the past. But the point I want to make is that through the Football Supporters Association, there's a lot of work going on. I know David mentions Fair Game. I've not really, you know, seen their work, and I don't know about the £1,000 they want to charge the club. The Football Supporters Association won't be charging £1,000 to be involved. I know that, and through ourselves, you've got a good link there through the three of us. I'd say that. Coming up this month, we're coming up to you all as individuals can be a member of the Football Supporters Association. If you go to the website, Football Supporters Association, you can sign up as a member for free. And there's a goldmine of information on there about all and everything that's going on. But perhaps yourself, David, could have a look at that, because you'll be amazed at the work that's taking place, a lot of work. And Blackpool are heavily involved in that, I would like to say. It will be interesting to hear from the MPs in the room as to where we are with the situation. There is an all-party group meeting a week on Tuesday in London, which myself and Robbie will be attending, and MPs will be attending. As I say, lots of work taking place on the fan-led review, and we are heavily involved there. And it's good to hear that the club, we're all on the same page. I feel that the distribution of wealth is the biggest issue that we have here, and the fan-led review being implemented will massively benefit Blackpool Football Club.
Yes.
Agreed. I don't think there's much more that we didn't say earlier, Tony, but I think what you did is, and maybe Brett and I didn't expressly, is, this is something that we need that wonderful work from BST, FSA to continue, as well as doing what we're doing. It is something that we can all work together on, because what concerns me, and in a former life I was one of those horrible football agents, but I wanted to sleep straight in bed at night. But the reality is, we don't just simply want an extra however many million landed in Championship football clubs, because Championship football clubs clearly struggle with financial fair play, and struggle to budget, and struggle to keep wages to turnover ratios under 100% in the main. So yeah, we are aligned in a lot of that redistribution, in a lot of the parachute payment sort of distortion, and I really hope that the minds controlling our government at the moment see that this is something they could do a lot of good with and create a lot of positivity for, with very little money actually leaving their budgets.
Great stuff, thank you. Next question over here.
Hi, so the question I've got is if the club, and I realise the trust as well, it can do anything more to reach out to what I believe is one of our greatest assets that's untapped, which is people like myself. There's a number of people up around the room who've travelled a long way to be here today. We're assets, we are, like Simon, but we come from a generation where to find work we had to leave Blackpool. You can take us out of Blackpool, but you can't take Blackpool out of us. And a lot of us are similar. We're not as bad off maybe because we've gone on to do jobs elsewhere, but we're assets, and we're going to the away games. I see a lot of people I went to school with, a lot of people that still have a great affinity for Blackpool, a great love for this community and want to do something, but we're not necessarily reached out to as one of the assets of the club, as indeed Simon was himself, like not living here but reached out. But there are lots of people that come to this game, so what can the club do and the trust do to leverage more, to engage us more, the people outside of Blackpool that still care about this community, still want to see this community thrive rather than die?
I mean, I would hope in terms of the club's infrastructure over the last sort of period of ownership for Simon in particular, that we went down the single sign-on journey this summer with Tangerine TV, with the new website and an improved website again. So now we have a lot of we have some infrastructure, we have a lot of better data, and I think we're now able to talk to the supporter in a way that we couldn't when we joined the club, and when Brett and I sort of started looking at what was in place. You all know that we had no real online store, we had no CRM system, we had no accurate data, lots of things were dealt with in cash. So no, it's just a fact. Now we are much more advanced in that. I guess I don't know. Brett might have a different view because he's Blackpool. I'm the sort of slight imposter for the last 3 years, but I think we're open to suggestions. Steve is always available. A lot of people at the club are available. I don't know, occasionally if we're playing away somewhere, do I travel down on the Friday night and do a Q&A in a pub where we could have a similar number of people? I've mentioned that to Steve before today. I would travel on a Friday, anything to get a night away. But no, in all seriousness, my little one's nearly 2, so those of you who know that's a tough age. But coming back to the point, we could do things like that. So we become a person, a face, a bit like what we do today. Other suggestions we're open to, because a lot of the best ideas will come from meetings like this, will come from exchanges with you at various events, and will come from the floor. So I think we're now able to communicate better. We have the infrastructure to communicate better. We have a lot better content. I think things like progressing with a Radisson hotel with Puma on the front of our shirts. We're getting there. There's a lot that's happened in the last 3 years, courtesy of the hard work put in by a lot of people in this room to sort of start the bright future. So I guess I'm going a little bit over to you, but I think yeah.
I think the point there, just to pick up on what Ben said, is talk to us. You know, we are always open. You can always contact us. I speak to lots of people about various ideas, and if the idea is valid and we can take it forward, we will do. So please speak with Steve, arrange a meeting, and we will do what we can to make things better. I take your point 100%. At away games now, we see the Manchester Seasiders flag. That's a group that's growing and growing. And you know, your point you make is valid. A lot of our kids get degrees now and they don't come back, you know, but they remain Blackpool fans. I talk about my own son. You know, he will always be a Blackpool fan, but he's probably unlikely to return to Blackpool. So it's a very good point you make. So let's discuss it and let's see what we can do that's constructive.
On that point, gents, do we know from our data what percentage of our season ticket holders live outside FY postcodes?
Yeah, we have various data exactly within FY postcodes and with outside. So no, we do have a lot of information now.
So
and
approximately how many live outside FY, would you say?
Or I honestly couldn't tell you an answer, and I'd hate
Well,
to
maybe
be
you can
drawn.
feed back,
I promise we'll feed it back to Steve or to any BST representative.
Would it be an
that
interesting
wants
one,
to
wouldn't it?
Yeah.
As regards other clubs as well, really, because I
A
bet
lot
the
of-
diaspora of Blackpool fans is pretty significant, isn't it?
It is. Look, a lot of our fan base come within 30 miles of the stadium, but no, we've seen a lot of interaction now. We have over nearly 20,000 accurate data records. When we started the journey towards Tangerine TV and our digital sort of journey with the new website and the improved website, there was over 300,000 touch points with our website for various reasons. Some people are just coming to Blackpool, some people family, who knows why 320,000 plus people a year look at our website. But we are growing an understanding and a better understanding of that, because as I'm sure you all sort of understood what I was saying earlier, we inherited very little data.
Yeah, great.
Just on that point, Andy, there, just as an aside, a couple of our players visited Polton after the Preston win, and they were made very aware of just how many supporters we have in Polton. I think they were quite shocked, actually.
Indeed.
So
Yes.
that's a hotbed.
No, good shout. Next question.
I recognise as a club we're only 1/72 of the EFL, and therefore our influence, I suppose, is limited. But frankly, going to games now, I'm sick of the level of diving and the quality of refereeing. I know referees get a hard time. I know.
No, they don't. Not enough.
Yeah. I know that. Well, a friend of mine tells me, I don't know how true this is, that if the manager has to complete a report on the referee at the end, and if you score anything, I think it's below an 8, you have to fill in something like a 30-page report. Which, if I was doing that, I know how I'd score them. So, I guess what can be done, because again, we all accept shithousery happens. Gaz is good at it. We accept that referees make poor decisions, but it really has reached new lows, and I just wonder what the club can do to influence it.
Go on, Ben.
So, Lee, can you knock this camera off? Right, for the record,
The camera's off, I think.
Is it? I am an absolute nightmare. I hate losing. Brett is absolutely brilliant. He says well done to everyone, he welcomes everyone. Everyone leaves with a wonderful impression of their trip to Blackpool. I can just sit there with a face like a slapped arse. I can be there to welcome referees into their dressing rooms, as I did after the QPR game last year, when they couldn't get that sort of very good goal from Kenny sort of right. This year we have seen, I think, a drop in the quality of championship referees. Now, God, I could really talk to another 5 o'clock on referees. Only in 10 years have you can't speak to the referee until 30 minutes after the game. At 26 minutes after the Sheffield United game, the referee was trying to get down the tunnel, at which I said, oh no, I'm waiting another 4 minutes till I can speak to you. And he says, what are you speaking to me for? Because I daren't let any other staff in to speak to you. I suggested that he got bullied in the tunnel at half-time because he refereed the game very differently. He said not. I said, well, I think the footage disagrees, and you know that I think last year, there's an element, isn't there, where we sit there, after the game, and we go, do you know what, there's a bit of give and take, these things will level out. Last year when we did the maths, we felt that we were 10 points down due to really glaring, obvious referees' mistakes. And you can do the maths on where that would have put us. This year, it's tough for league. A lot of teams have spent a lot more money. COVID and financial fair play and wages to turnover ratio seems to be a thing of the past for championship clubs, or most of them. So we might have the luxury of letting the officials rob us, in my opinion, of 10 points. I have regular conversations with Kevin Friend, the ex-Premier League referee, who has now taken over the management of what they call select Group 2 referees. I call them championship referees. He's took over from Alan Wiley. I liked Alan. He could talk to you. I feel Kevin, and I've said this to Kevin, I feel he listens because he thinks he needs to. It's his way of staying involved in the game after finishing refereeing. But actually, he just looks for an excuse to tell you that you're wrong. I've had many calls. Nick Horn, our club secretary, a lot of you know, he does fill out those 30-page reports on a regular basis. The only saving grace I believe we have for the quality of refereeing improving is the arrival of Howard Webb in December as the head of all things refereeing in this country. I had the pleasure of spending a bit of time with Howard because I was I worked at Barnsley, and he's a big Rotherham fan, and every sort of charitable dinner or function or football function, Howard was there and I was there. He is best in class, as I think you all accept. He is a South Yorkshire lad who refereed the biggest game in the world and a number of the biggest games in the world. He's our last hope, in my opinion, because he will not suffer fools. He is at it. He's gone around the world, banked his cash, and now he's coming home to sort our lot out. And hopefully Howard won't mind me saying that. The real interesting bit, and I think, because we've appealed Shane Lavery's red card, we appealed our mass confrontation charge, and how Fotheringham can throw his towel off, throw his gloves up, I'm a rugby league fan as well, pick Lavery up, dump him to the ground, he gets a 3-match ban and we get 25 grand fine. I'm not so sure. The great thing is, if you're not following it, is Sheffield United have got done 3 times for mass confrontations this season. So if their fine ain't bigger than 25 grand next week, I'll be writing even more letters. The problem is the FA can't get hold of them. Just get a voicemail, just get an email. No one wants to pick up the phone, no one wants to talk, no one wants to explain. It's difficult. But Howard Webb, for me, is our last saviour. But just so you all know, I am falling out with referees. I am ringing Andy Amble, who's head of professional game at the FA. We are appealing when we feel a sense of injustice. Simon is potentially being offered the opportunity to speak to the head of all refereeing in this country, because he's as incensed as you guys. I don't think he'll mind me saying that.
No, he's absolutely incensed.
Do you support VAR?
My problem with VAR, and again, it's great to be talking all things football with you, because I know in the past, in these meetings, things would have been more challenging, but hopefully you won't mind me keeping going on the referees issue. No, the issue with VAR is, I was in Israel for a period where they brought VAR in. If you think the quality of refereeing in the UK is bad, then we're a bit lively in Tel Aviv as well. Great, but my frustration there was a lot of them spoke English, so I was in real trouble when I didn't think they could. But the issue with VAR is you could have VAR Lite, which is 4, 8 or 12 cameras. In the World Cup, when they've got 30 plus cameras, the hope is that a referee sat in an office or in front of a screen, if he's got 30 to 42 views, he shouldn't mess it up, yeah? If we're looking for the same referees that can't clearly, notice that Ollie McBurney's forearm smashed our goalkeeper, yeah? If those individuals are still going to be the ones only looking at 4 views or 8 views, which actually might give them 2, 2.5, 3 views more than the numpty on the pitch that's got it wrong, I'm not so sure it's worth the money. I would rather say to Howard Webb, can we get more coaches? Can they spend more time at St George's Park in the week? The other thing which I think is a challenge for referees, and think about this, so they become full-time referees, select Group 2 Championship, select Group 1 Premier League. Now before they get to 35-ish, or she, before they get to that age, they've had careers, they've had jobs. So they bring these individuals into select Group 2, probably within a season or two, because you can see the rankings go, they ain't going to make select Group 1. How do you go to someone who's just left a job of 20 years and go, going to make you unemployed? Because I'll tell you what, you know, I've worked for owners that if you're not up to it, you're out. But with this refereeing one, it's a really unique situation that you take them from an entire career journey, you drop them into a job, you realise they're not good enough, you've got to drop them out again. That ain't going to promote the best in class staying. I think I've talked about referees for long enough, but the one thing you can be assured of, every time we're wronged, we're at them. We're 30-page reports, I'm on the phone, I'm questioning everything, including their motherhood, and so is everybody connected to the club. So I hope that Howard Webb's going to make a difference. I don't think VAR's the answer, but I think spending more on coaching and more time that the referees spend together with the likes of Howard Webb, I sincerely hope that those 10 points are going to get eradicated in years to come. Will VAR come in the Championship? Potentially. I think a lot will depend on what happens with the broadcasting deal when Sky's up, because if we go more towards the iFollow model, more towards a streaming option, then the chances is a lot more cameras will be put in the stadiums, and hopefully, if they're sensible, the more cameras in the stadium could be linked to an ability for VAR.
Ladies and gents, can we all put our hands together, please, for Brett and Ben today? It's been an excellent session. Really enjoyed it.
Thank you, everyone. Keep up the good work and let's get back to winning ways. I'm gonna.
It's a Saturday, so we'll be on.
I'll stay and just Thank you.
So the bar's function away if anybody wants to pull themselves a drink or wander across there. That'd be great. I'd like to invite up Paul Scott and Paul, our 2 local MPs. If you came to last year's AGM, you'll be familiar obviously with Paul. He made I thought a truly excellent speech off the cuff. He just gave him the microphone and all the parliamentary stuff came out. It was excellent. Tangerine, it's got to be. It's got to be tangerine. So, yeah, sort of in terms of the agenda, we thought it'd be a great opportunity to meet with our 2 MPs who have been advocates for the Supporters Trust and Blackpool Football Club in the Houses of Parliament, give a bit of an update in terms of where everything is. So I said we're just on 12 o'clock, so if we look maybe for about 15 minutes or so between you 2 guys, is that okay? What do you prefer to do? Do you want to make a bit of an introduction, just say a few words about it, or just take questions from the floor?
Yeah, happy to say a few words about where we are with fan-led review and then take it from there, if that's okay.
Microphone
can everybody hear me at the back? Can everybody hear me at the back, firstly? Brilliant. Firstly, thank you for Andy and the Supporters Club for inviting Paul and myself here today. Great opportunity to update you on the fan-led review. Also, thank you to you and your team for the hundreds of hours you spend running the Supporters Trust as well. Absolutely integral job, not just to support the football club, but to support the community as well, as we've seen over the last 10 years. So thank you for all of your efforts behind the scenes as well. So in terms of where we are up to with the fan-led review, it was first published last year, and the government have had 12 months to bring this into effect. We haven't so far, but the government have communicated the fact that they agree wholesale with the recommendations within that review. So what are the recommendations briefly? Well, effectively it has 2 twin aims. The first is to really grasp the nettle on financial regulation of football clubs, hence why we're bringing in a new independent regulator, new owners and directors test to make sure we can't have idiots running football clubs like we've had in the past. New stronger governance arrangements as well. There are also measures in there for a greater voice for fans, so we'll have a shadow board essentially to make sure that fans are at the heart of football clubs and can communicate their ideas across. There's also elements in there about heritage, preserving those within football clubs so we can't have ridiculous situations like Cardiff had, where an owner forced them to play in red rather than blue, or like Hull City had, where the owner wanted them to be called Hull Tigers. So all of those parts are integral to the review. But I think, as Brett and Ben said before, it's one thing having greater financial measures to control expenditure within football clubs, but ultimately we need a fairer settlement between the Premier League and the English Football League. So I've spoken to ministers at length over the last 12 months about fan-led review. If it wasn't for the issue about agreeing a fair and transparent financial settlement between the Premier League and the English Football League, this would have already been a done deal. Would have taken this through Parliament and it would have happened. The fly in the ointment has been the fact that the government don't necessarily want to get their hands dirty and dictate to the EFL and the Premier League what that financial settlement should be. So the government were clear in the spring. They gave the Premier League and the EFL until the end of the summer, effectively the start of the football season, to come up with a deal. That deadline has now passed and the government has a key decision to make. It either forces the Premier League and the EFL to come up with an arrangement, or it will come in and do that themselves. And I think from speaking to ministers, we are now at that point. If you believe some of the press speculation, they are actually close, the Premier League and the EFL, to reaching an agreement. There's been all sorts of stories about reforming not just the financial settlement, but the League Cup, FA Cup replays. All of those things could be parts of a new agreement between both structures. So I suspect very strongly before Christmas we will see movement on this. The Secretary of State for Culture, Media and Sport and the Sports Minister has a meeting for all MPs on Monday at 6 o'clock. I'm going to that, I think Paul is as well. So it's pity that meeting wasn't a few days ago, because we could have come here and have told you exactly what the story was, but it's just disappointing. We'll find out on Monday now instead. So Paul and I will be able to say a lot more next week on this issue. I've spoken in Parliament about this on 11 different occasions. I asked a question a couple of weeks ago about this as well, about the exact stage of the discussions between both organisations. But the delays have been absolutely unacceptable. And the big concern for me is every month which goes by, or every season which goes by without action, we see more football clubs in trouble, whether it be Derby County, whether it be Bury. So we have to act. And I think Ben and Brett had a very good point when they spoke about this is essentially levelling up. You'll have heard about the government lecture people about what we're doing to level up people's life opportunities across the country. The football element here is the fact that we recognise that football clubs, especially in working class areas in the North and Midlands, are at the heart of their community, and we need to make sure they're sustainable for the long term. And if that means the government intervening to make sure that some of the money is going to the Premier League, especially the big six, trickle down to likes of Blackpool, Burnley, Barrow, Accrington, or wherever those clubs may be, that is what we need to do to safeguard the future of the English game. So you've got both of our 100% support on this issue. Please do email us next week. We'll feed back to Andy what comes out of the meeting on Monday. But you've got us both on board, and really the government need to act now, because we're in the second half of the Parliament. Huge challenges ahead, cost of living, the NHS. There's always something else the government has to act on, but this can't wait, and we need to do this straight away.
Can you hear me? This working? If you can't hear me, put your hand up.
You just hold it right up to your mouth, it's fine.
Right up to my mouth, that's working. Right. Oh, firstly, my apologies for being late. Last year I was half an hour early. This year I was half an hour late. Maybe next year I'll be on time. Who knows? Doesn't take much for my diary management. I agree. I think I came in just as Brett and Ben were doing a fantastic job of promoting the government, better than I could at the moment. But governance in football, which is the phrase we're hearing, is critical. Now, my first priority right now is governance in government. Getting that right, that's a bit of a challenge after the last few weeks. But I think we now have an opportunity. Scott mentioned the meeting tomorrow. That I think will be crucial. Tracy Crouch and I have a coffee once a week in the morning, our breakfast, setting the ball to rights. But the first 5 minutes is normally behind a Blackpool dealer at the weekend because she has a family interest, of course. And she is immensely confident that most of what she has recommended and what you're setting out today in terms of distributing the money is going to occur. So I'm optimistic as to what I'm going to hear tomorrow. Faces may change, names may change. You may struggle to name the sports minister. Hand of anyone who can name the sports minister.
Christine.
Yeah, well done at the back. Three points for that man, maybe for the bar. The names may change, but the salient politically of this, I always say to every minister, every new minister I come across, that this is the only town where the Supporters Trust puts up parliamentary candidates. This is a political issue. It's not just a fun and games issue, hi Andy. And that doesn't worry me, because that gives me ammunition to point out to ministers why this matters. And I was sitting down with the new deputy head of policy, I think it is, at Downing Street. He's just been appointed the day before yesterday. I saw him for a coffee earlier in the week, and we were talking about the importance of sport in communities like the ones I represent. And it isn't just championship clubs. It's when you're going to Squires Gate, where I've gone to see non-league matches, because my hometown team, North Victoria rather, been in the same league as Squires Gate in recent years. It's all down, right down to the amateur level as well, to junior level. I feel a bit sorry for some referees because of the abuse they get at junior league, so I'll stick up for some referees maybe. But sport matters to our communities. Politicians haven't got that before. They've been non-interventionists. Oh, it's a matter for the football clubs, blah, blah, blah. Whilst all the while we've seen what's gone on here in this town. So I welcome the fact that government is now recognising that there is a role for the state in supporting this sport in particular. So I'm optimistic what we're going to hear on Monday. And I'm going to be urging them not to say, oh, well, we will legislate in due course. That's one risk, is we will legislate as soon as possible before the next election to make sure it's on the statute book. That's the big risk I now want to mitigate. And just on a few of the other points I heard around opening up the football club for over the winter when times are going to be tough, I don't disagree. And I would urge the club to speak to the Director of Public Health, Ari Pura, because it can get every single community asset across the town, how it can be opened up for those who need it most. And there's a word I didn't hear when we were discussing that matter, which is loneliness. There's a massive correlation between those in this town who live alone and qualify as being lonely and who are being particularly affected by inability to afford their own heating. So I would really ask the club to think about that. I know actually the Community Trust does an immense amount trying to tackle loneliness in the town, but the club has a really important role to play in supporting those people in particular, the older male demographic who often are the loneliest and who might be the most likely to come to the football club to look for support. So just additional social policy point at the end there. Well, happy to take questions on football or anything.
Okay.
Within reason.
Thank you for that, Paul. We'll hand over to Christine. Let's see if Mark wants to ask a question as well.
Just going back to the whole fan-led review thing, my big worry is the pressure that is being brought by the regulator. So I'm not sure that now is the right one to call with Michelle Donnellan, who is the Secretary of State for DCMS this week, I think. Anyway,
this week, yeah.
So I tend to get rolled out when these people who make decisions need to understand how fans feel and how supporters feel and how communities feel. And obviously I will be putting that question across to them or getting that across. But I just wondered how you gentlemen feel about this, and do you sense that there is this almost bullying and this pushing from the money boys to not to implement the fan-led review properly?
the press in some way intervene. Equally, you will recall the same phrase that I recall, which is last chance saloon. The FA were in the last chance saloon, according to Tracy, many, many years ago. I see no reason why they should be allowed out of that last chance saloon, frankly. Indeed, they've failed comprehensively since that point. So yes, that is a risk, but don't forget, this turns itself into legislation. Legislation can be amended, and the opposition will be perfectly happy to amend legislation, I can assure you. They think there are votes in it. That's how politics works. The likes of me and Scott can examine the legislation and put pressure on ourselves. So what is said, or what appears in legislation, is only the start of a process. But I don't get any sense, from what I'm hearing from ministers, that the FA is somehow going to negotiate its way out of this. And they stop trying to lobby the likes of me, because I think they recognise it's run out of steam. So at no point do I think the argument has been won until that law gets royal assent at some future date. We have to be vigilant, but there's an immense appetite from the likes of Scott and me and many other MPs up and down the country to actually get this right. And we recognise the FA has had its moment and lost the argument.
No, I think you're entirely right. There is, of course, vested interest pushing back on this. I've met with the Premier League 2 or 3 times on this, and their stop line is actually they accept large parts of Tracy's review, including the financial regulation elements. What they don't accept is the need for a larger slice of the pie, and that comes across very strongly. They often highlight the so-called transient 14 Premier League clubs, Crystal Palace, Southampton, those who flip between the EFL and the Premier League, and say, well, actually, they'd be adversely affected just like some other clubs would be if we gave the EFL more money. That's the Premier League's pushback, hence why a deal hasn't been reached yet. But again, as Paul was alluding to, that's where the government needs to come in and make sure this happens. Because frankly, we could be waiting until we get the World Cup back in England in 50 years' time before the Premier League will voluntarily hand over more.
It's alright, the women will do that.
Thanks, Scott. We've got a question from Mark.
Cheers, Andy. Cheers, Andy. Not work.
I can hear you.
You can hear me. There we go. Right. Yeah, Mark Turner, BST committee. Pleased to hear about the firm views you have on money coming down the pyramid. Money's obviously important. Paul, you came in a little bit late, but we've launched today the 1953 sweepstake. Half of the money will go to good causes, which BST will be looking out for. We'll be funding mascots, all the things that we do, tickets for disadvantaged people, and so on and so forth. And half of the money will go out in prizes. And I know that you, Scott, take a firm interest in gambling as part of your day job. So my question to both of you is, are you both going to sign up?
Yeah. Send me the form.
I have been known to have a flutter. You are quite right, so I will publicise that on my social media as well and give that a push if we can help.
Fantastic.
So if you can make sure you send us the details, it can go on both our social media. Someone sends me the form, I'll sign up. I'll sign up to anything these days.
We even have a QR code there for those of you who are in the modern world. You can just QR code it. Yeah.
I'm a Tory, I'm not in the modern world.
How are we doing, folks? Any more questions before we let these two gentlemen abscond? No? Okay, well, I'm going to say thank you very much indeed. It's been wonderful that you've come down and attended. Can I have a nice round of applause for these two chaps? Thanks, Scott. Cheers, Paul. So, once again, thanks to everybody for attending. Thanks for all your wonderful input.
Just jump in. Can I just quickly answer a couple of questions that were put on that lovely forum AVFTT? Because I don't want it to be said that we don't answer questions. So those two questions were, we asked members to fill in a survey some months ago, which many of you did, but we haven't published the results. I can't remember why we haven't, to be honest, and whether it's just because we've been so busy and we just haven't quite got round to doing it. But I can assure everybody that that we will do so, and that we are acting on many of your comments, and indeed the fundraising, etc., and where we're targeting it has come directly from that survey. The second question was, what are BST doing about diversity? What we're doing to encourage people from all walks of life and women, etc. What I would say to that is that we sponsor Jake Daniels. We sponsor one of the Blackpool girls and ladies football teams. We used to have a female chair of the trust and 2 ladies on the committee, but we do need more women. But we are definitely a very inclusive organisation, and really we want to push that forward. We are open to all. So I just wanted to answer those questions because, you know, many people might be thinking the same thing. So that's now done. Thank you.
Cheers, Christine. One other very small point of order. We have lovely Laura here, who's got a collection bucket, which will be shaking as people leave the room. Laura works with Chris Hull and the Tangerine family, and last year we held a meal for the homeless here, didn't we, around Christmas, and we're going to continue doing some fundraising again to do the same thing again this year.
We're having a collection outside the ground. I think it's on the 10th when we play Birmingham. When we come back after
Okay, so today we'll publicise all this as well, just to let you know. So it's Chris Hull and a group of people do a lot of good work. So there's one happening here. Is there another one happening elsewhere, or is it just the one here this Christmas?
One here.
The one here.
Yeah, there's one here on Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day is at the Sally Army.
Oh, and Christmas Day at the Salvation Army. So another good group that are working with us to assist with the community. So if you can be generous and dig deep, and put a few coppers into the bucket, that will be greatly appreciated.
Last year altogether, I think we got just over £3,500 for
Yeah.
all the collections, all away coaches and everything.
Yes, wonderful. Okay, so thanks again to everybody. Thanks again to Brett, particularly from the club and our MPs. And we will also have to thank Mr. Lee Charles, who's been broadcasting this. If you want to scrutinise or go over any of the questions that have been asked, or see yourselves up there on YouTube, that will all be on Lee's channel with his new multi-dimensional setup he's very excited about, which cost him 1,200 quid, didn't it, Lee, you told me? Yes, he did. So thanks again to Lee. So have a great day. Up the pool. 3 points. Thanks everybody for coming. Cheers.